everyone, this is Kristina Mand-Lakhiani, co-founder of Mindvalley, and welcome to my Honest Conversations. And I have a very interesting and unique guest today. I don't think I've talked about this topic yet, but we'll see how it unfolds. So my guest today is Vylana Marcus. She's a sound alchemist and a personal transformation mentor, right? Welcome, Vylana.
Thank you.
And
thank you so much.
You know, I checked your work, and you create beautiful music. So I guess the sound alchemy is connected. But can you explain first what are you doing, and how does sound and transformation, how do they come together?
Yeah, for sure. That's a really, really big question. So I'll try to tackle it in the easiest and most direct way as possible. Starting kind of with the foundation of why sound works as a healing modality is, you know, according to quantum physics, everything in the universe is vibration. So the physical body, any matter, you know, this couch, a piano, everything is actually vibrating, even though, you know, it's physical matter and it's solid. And in our body, every single cell that we have, every tissue, every bone, every organ has a resonant frequency that it vibrates at when you're in health. And when these resonant frequencies are disrupted, which can be from many different things, it can be from, you know, being exposed to external toxicity, it can be from emotional trauma, just anything that's really throwing the system out of whack. If you think about it sort of like a piano, you know, a piano that's out of tune, it's not in harmony. It doesn't, you know, it feels really off, and the body kind of works in the same way. So what I'm doing with sound healing is I'm working, you know, with that assumption that everything is energy, and I intuit, I listen to your body's needs. So I'm sort of a vessel, you know, I'm listening to where there is dissonance in your energy fields. And I sing and I create frequencies with crystal bowls and Tibetan bowls to bring your body back into resonance. And this can work for, you know, a plethora of things. And it's really powerful. I hope that's kind of like the most consolidated explanation.
Can I ask a slightly funny question? My kids really love this this movie or TV series, Umbrella Academy, and they have
I've heard of it.
They have this character, White Violin, who transforms vibrations into energy, and then she brings on apocalypses, unfortunately, in the first movie.
Wow.
But if you don't know the movie, then I guess this question is irrelevant, because I wanted to say if this is something similar to what you are doing, she kind of uses vibrations to as a force that is actually physical.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I mean, the way that it's worked for me, you know, I've worked with individuals, I've worked with mastermind groups of, you know, upwards of, you know, 50 to 100 people. And the way that it works on every individual is so specific. You know, its ability to penetrate your body in a non-invasive way, you know, like it's literally moving through you. Sound actually conducts through the water in your body best, and our bodies are made of over 70% water. It can move through your bones, you know. So it's even used, like, sound is what we experience as, you know, what we call audible sound, but there's also inaudible frequencies that are also vibration that are already being used, you know, therapeutically with kind of some specific examples like ultrasound. They use ultrasound to target uterine fibroids and different things in the body, you know, to kind of disrupt or dismantle dissonant frequency. Whereas the way that I'm kind of working is bringing everything back into a harmonious state. But, you know, there's a really great book and a recent podcast that my husband, Aubrey, and I did recently with Dr. Kulreet Chaudhary. Her book that she put out recently is called Sound Medicine. And it's so exciting because she takes this wealth of knowledge from, you know, ancient Siddha medicine and scriptures from 8,000 years ago, you know, very ancient texts and very spiritual communities. And she's putting this science-based evidence to what is actually physically happening. I mean, sound actually has the ability to alter the way you express proteins. It has the ability to alter your molecular structure, you know? So, I mean, the effects are what I've experienced in doing sessions with people is it feels like it's a truly limitless technology that we're only beginning to understand, you know, with science. But for anyone that's really, really interested in sound as medicine, for more of like I'm very, I have knowledge around scientifically what's happening, but for me, it's very intuitive, you know, it's very feeling, like I see and I sense into people. I get visions when I'm working on them as to, you know, how to guide them through, you know, wherever they're out of balance in different energy centers, or where they might have stuck trauma, or, you know, like a guarded heart and kind of energy that's just like taking from their life force energy to just like continue to protect themselves. But going back to Dr. Colreit's work, she really, I mean, this book is a masterpiece of just everything that's the leading edge and, you know, ancient science about why sound really, really, truly works, and where medicine and integrative modalities can like really head is it's really, really exciting. And it's an incredible composite of information. If you're either our podcast with her, it's like a little taste of it, but if you're really interested in going deeper into the science of it, her book Sound Medicine it's incredible.
It sounds super interesting, and I'm a very audio person. For me, for example, the tone of voice is very important in my relationship to the person. I can just fall in love with voice. Obviously, I've been married to a guy with a very good voice for a long time.
He has a very soothing, incredible voice. You did great.
And I know it's not completely a new thing for the humanity, because after all, you know, even the war sounds were not out of the blue. I want to ask a practical question. We'll talk about science because I love science of that, but I want to ask a practical question. Does the fact that we live in this constant sound pollution, does that really have a strong effect on us? I've heard some people.
I think yeah, I mean, I think that, like, okay, kind of like using like a simple example that I think everyone could understand. Like, if you observe just in your own personal experience the way music makes you feel. So like if you're watching a movie and it's this very dramatic scene that has all of this, you know, melancholy symphony of sounds, it's emoting a feeling within you. If you go to the gym, you know, everyone has that playlist that makes them feel like they can work harder, that they can push themselves, that feels really like motivating or inspiring, or, you know, maybe it's like metal and it's just crazy. But there's like, you know, the external sounds are affecting your internal system. So I think, I don't know if I totally understand what you mean by sound pollution, but I absolutely, you know, my own perception is, and science has proven that like the environment and the vibrations that are happening outside of us are affecting us internally.
By sound pollution, I meant just the noises of the city and the noises of machinery in the house and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also highly sensitive to sound. I totally resonate with having resonance with particular people's voices, or maybe there's a little bit of, you know, dissonance or misalignment. But like, if you think of, you know, we have people that come do the yard and they have those blowers, and it's like, for me, it's just like, it feels like it kind of gives me this stress response. Like, it's not like I'm going to go meditate and listen to, you know, the people blowing me. Thank you to them for keeping the yard beautiful. But, you know, it definitely, the way that my body receives it, it kind of shifts what my internal experience is. There's a difference in how you feel when you listen to a beautiful classical piece of music versus like, you know, Rage Against the Machine rock, or, you know, so, and I think it affects us in the same way with any kind of external vibration. It's not just about music, you know, it's
Mhm.
definitely about the sounds. And I lived in LA for 5 years, and LA is a very, you know, busy, very heavily concentrated place with just like so much going on. There's always traffic, there's always cars honking, there's always, you know, so many things going on. And I didn't really notice the way that it affected me until I would leave. You know, I traveled for a couple years, and every time I would return home, I would feel this like inner stress that didn't feel like it was designated by anything I was going through. You know, I wasn't like stressed about work or stressed about relationships or anything like that. It literally just felt like the environment that I was highly susceptible to the effects of the
Mhm.
external environment. And so I now live in Austin, Texas, where it's a lot more, you know, it's very open. There's so much nature everywhere. And it just feels like I have the ability to kind of like listen to my inner workings a lot easier because it isn't so distorted with so much external feedback.
Mm. You know, I heard this interesting theory. I have a friend from a long time ago. He said he was working on creating soundtracks for shops and cafes to incentivize people to buy more and quicker, or stay longer, or leave the cafe faster, depending on the time of the day and the traffic in the place. And I know that DJ is also
Mm-hmm.
using uh, BMPs to manipulate the crowd, as far as
For
I
sure.
heard.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
what do we do with our natural taste for music? Because I'm actually lucky. I prefer more melodic and even classical music, but those people who actually like very um, I wouldn't want to insult anyone, but noisy and aggressive music,
Mm.
does that
Yeah. Well,
have a strong effect on their life?
I think that the thing with music is I think that it's speaking to something that is within them, you
Mm,
know? Like when I was younger and I didn't, you know, I wasn't very aware of myself. And when I would go through challenging times, I would always listen to very sad music. It
mm,
was like it was speaking to something that was in me that I really needed to feel or process. So for people who listen to certain kinds of music, it might be expressing something that's going on internally that they might not really be aware of. You know, another example of that just in my own personal life is I used to, when I worked in LA and I was doing music, I also worked in nightlife. So I listened to a lot of like, you know, in the nightclubs they're playing rap music, and there's a thing about it that's so much fun because it's like, you know, the way that I like to dance and move, like there's a total thing to it. But the way that I've you know, not being in that environment anymore, the things that I'm naturally drawn to are just different. Like I really I'm very, very protective over my peace and feeling serenity. And, you know, the music that I'm drawn to, the more that I like deepen into myself and the more self-awareness that I have around what my values are, it has just, it's totally shifted like
mm,
completely. Like I've done a 180 to what the music I used to be really drawn to. However, that's not to say that I can't listen to like a really good trap song, you know, when I like want to go to the gym and just like, you know, it creates that excitement in me. So, but I think that we're drawn to the kinds of music that are speaking to something that's
mm,
happening, you know, inside of us. And I think that's also why, you know, when I facilitate sound healing for people, it feels very, just from the feedback that I get from people, it feels very angelic and very
mm,
loving. You know, it feels like a space where you can be vulnerable, you know, like you can cry when something feels like it's piercing your heart. And it's just, it's kind of giving people this different kind of feedback that feels very specific to them and allows them to just kind of settle into themselves and journey within, you know, whatever they might need to release or whatever they want to embody more. But it's yeah, it sounds really complex. It seems we think of it as pretty simple, but it's actually, there's so many things that are that are happening.
I want to tell people who don't know Vylana that if you want to hear the angelic music, you should totally follow her Instagram. I know
Thank
there's
you.
a lot of beautiful music there, and I'm very audial. You can literally sway me one way or the other with music.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to ask you this question. You obviously have a professional training in music. How does that influence your work? Because you keep saying that you're very intuitive in that work, but
Yeah.
how much this understanding of anatomy of music, if I can say so, is important?
I'm actually not very trained. You would maybe think so. I spent about 5 years living in LA trying to be an artist, but I haven't actually ever been vocally trained. I took my training was probably limited to like choir in high school, so I understand some of the mechanics or how to read music. You know, I play the piano, but like the really truly deep understanding of it is actually not, surprisingly, not my background. Um, Coming to sound healing, though, I was trained in a particular healing modality by my teacher. His name is Dr. Paul Hubbard. For anyone, a lot of people ask where I was trained because they're so interested, or a lot of singers, you know, that want to use their voice, but they don't know, you know, how to use it. It can be so healing for people. And you know, when I came to sound healing in this particular healing modality called holographic sound healing, it's working with sound in a multidimensional sense, based on the way that you're setting up energy and the way that you're moving through the body and the chakra systems. So I did take, you know, the certification with my teacher, which he teaches you exactly what I'm doing. And it's not, you know, super intense, but it's very comprehensive. You know, he teaches you a lot about everything that I'm speaking. He also teaches you a lot of different more spiritual things, and a lot about you know, traditions in ancient Egypt and how they've already been doing stuff like this for thousands of years. But yeah, like if you're a singer, or even not, you know, my husband Aubrey doesn't think that he's a singer, but he's recently taken up doing mantras. He was gifted a mantra by this beautiful woman called Bharati, and he's been doing mantras recently. And we did a ceremony the other day, and you know, the lower frequencies of the male voice, it is so, I mean, in ceremony started singing these mantras, and I mean, I felt like I was a baby. Like I started to kind of just like, you know, I was laying on his chest, and I kind of just like felt my entire body relax. And you can see this in there's a particular guy that I follow on Instagram that he has a little girl, and she would cry, you know, as an infant, and he would om to her. And as soon as he would start oming, she would kind of
Yes, I
just
saw this.
relax and stop crying. Like he has video after video, and I'm so fascinated by that. And I feel like, you know, on Friday when we did our spiritual ceremony together, I experienced that. Like I went from, you know, active and talking and listening to him singing to me, and it just really brought me into this state of like peace. It felt like it totally relaxed my nervous system. I felt super, super present. It almost felt like a meditation. And he doesn't think he's a singer, but it was profound for me, you know. And I think we have like judgment as to what a singer is, and I can definitely speak to that because I spent, you know, 5 years trying to be an artist, but like a pop artist, and that really wasn't for me, and I was super judgmental of myself. But like if you just have, everyone has a voice to use, and we're all singers. So for people who are interested, like sound, actually taking this certification, learning holographic sound healing, and building a relationship with my bowls. I use crystal and Tibetan bowls, and it's like they're their own living beings, and there's this like synergy between using them and the way that my voice moves. And that's just developed over just doing it. It wasn't like, you know, I just came out the gates and I knew what to do. It was like playing them, I started to sense and feel how my voice could move, and my voice is just naturally expanded on its own. I haven't had any vocal
Mm,
coaching or anyone that's shown me how to do anything. I always had,
mm,
a natural ability. However, it's been incredibly, magnetized by just experimenting
mm.
with the bowls. And it makes it less scary, because I think when we're just singing, if there's like something that's out of tune or not in harmony, we feel like embarrassed and judgmental, and then we want to stop. But with the bowls, they're so powerful. I mean, it doesn't really matter. And one of the lessons that I learned a long time ago is it's all about getting out of the way. It's
Mm.
all about getting out of your head. Like, sometimes I sing things that aren't in harmony, and I'm like a snob about, obviously, like, I do sound healing, and I'm kind of a little bit of a snob about things being really resonant sounding or harmonious. And I had this lesson one day, kind of by my spiritual guidance, because everything that was coming out sounded weird, and I really wasn't liking it. But there's a purpose to dissonance that might be, breaking up something in your energy system that's
Mm.
blocked. So I think for people who are interested in using their voice, for something more, sound healing is an incredible way to just expand that part of you and get really comfortable and confident with just like flowing with whatever comes.
It's so interesting because you keep saying that your husband doesn't think he's a singer, and you told me just a little earlier. No, no, I'm not. I'm not a trained musician, but you do play piano beautifully, and
Oh, thank you.
I like.
I did learn how to, I took lessons for a little while, for like 6 months. So I have been trained in like how to read music. Yeah.
It's interesting because I want to maybe emphasize on that point that you've been saying, that we all have a voice and we all should use it. I'll first probably explain why I'm saying it's a very interesting idea. I want maybe to sink in.
Sure.
I sing to my children lullabies, and I don't think
Mm.
I'd ever dare to sing it to anyone else. But my children, they don't judge. They don't mind me singing however it is.
No.
But what I've noticed, and I've been singing the lullabies now for 12 years because my oldest,
Oh,
actually
wow.
13, because my oldest is 13. But what I've noticed is that actually singing, it helps me to, like, sometimes when your heart maybe is fluttering or you're stressed and you're like vibrating inside, it really
Yep.
helps me to calm down. And I love the
Yeah.
singing, no matter how stressful the day is. I come, I sing to them, and I feel, and there's no scientific proof, but it's my personal life experience. It makes me
Yeah.
feel better and healthier. So
There,
why I wanted to emphasize on that is that I have instruments at home. I have a harp and I have a piano, and my kids have a saxophone and a violin, and
wow.
none of us plays anything of that
Oh.
professionally yet. The kids are
Yet.
learning. But how important do you think it is that we grown-ups, serious, responsible grown-ups, keep playing with music, with instruments, with our voice, even if we are not professional?
I think it is a necessity. I mean, it's the same as like dance and moving the body. It's like part of what we are as beings. And it's so fascinating, everything that you're saying. I didn't finish this book, but I read a good deal of it. It's called Yoga for the Voice by
Mm,
Sylvia Nakash. And, she believes that every single person can sing. And she actually put a lot of science-based evidence to why using our own voice is the most healing thing that we can do for ourselves, even more so than using external instruments. Because when we're using the voice, specifically with like humming or oming, it is doing all sorts of biological things in the body. It increases your nitric oxide, which goes through your blood. It stimulates the vagus nerve, which is, runs throughout your entire body and through your, reaches your entire nervous system. So like by using our own voice, we can also, you don't need crystal bowls and a setup of, all this stuff. Like literally your own voice, just by humming, or what, sound healers call toning, anything that's intuitive, whether it's a song, whether it's just humming something in the shower, it's actually really healing to ourselves. And there is, I'm not very well versed in it, but there is a lot of science as to
mhm,
why that's working for you. And, you know, like sound is this primal thing you know, that's happened in every, like, you don't go through history and see any culture that hasn't had sound in some way. You know, in indigenous cultures, they have drumming circles that would bring every, you know, a group into coherence. And it's almost like they're drumming to this one heartbeat, which is really cool. Like there's so much of what we are as human beings that are mute, like our body. And this is proven by this thing called sonocytology, where they took these like amplifiers, and they were able to measure the inaudible sounds of the cell, and they were able to turn them into audible sounds. So essentially every single cell in your body has a song. So, you know, to remove ourselves from sound, it's kind of like removing ourselves from what our makeup is. So, you know, having to be a professional at anything, you know, I have a very dear friend. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. His name is Porangi. He is one of the most incredible musical artists I've ever met in my life. I mean, he is just completely connected to God and just creating. He plays the didgeridoo. He can play anything. You could give him a spoon and he'll create something magical out of it. But before I started to sing again, I actually stopped singing for like 2 years after I was trying to be an artist. You know, he would take us through drum circles, and it's just this encouragement, like, just do it. Don't have any judgment, you know, just get out there and just do it and let yourself be free and see what happens. And he has this course called Music is Medicine. If anyone's ever interested in just like, you know, developing that sense of like freedom and liberation in themselves around sound. But it helped me. It kind of invited me to just express and not have judgment around it. You know, like not everything is going to be like, I could compare myself to Whitney Houston or, you know, some of these like extraordinary singers, but I'm just my own voice. Like every person is just their own specific sound. And maybe for somebody, it makes them really excited to like bang spoons together. And like, that's their thing. But I mean, especially for kids, like you look at kids and they're so excited to dance. They're so excited to just like play anything, because it's like, they're so connected to what it is to just be playful and to just express all the time. So I think it's a very, very significant and an important thing that's just part of our makeup.
Something you said reminded me that lately, now that I have a daughter, she's 6 now.
How old is she?
She's
Oh.
6. So my son is the older one, and he's already, when I sing a lullaby, he's just like, yeah, sing. My daughter sings along.
With you, yeah.
And the perfectionist in me wants to say, wait, let me sing properly. It's so funny. What you said is that it's really like so cute how children just express themselves without without judgment and comparison.
They don't have like the constructs of being, you know, like they're so impressionable, and we grew up being told we're wrong, or that didn't sound good, or, you know, it's like we're always trying to get love. So we have that judgment of ourselves, like, you know, if I sing this note off, I won't receive love. And it's a very it's such a psychological thing, and you see it's more prevalent in adults. Kids are just like, they don't care. They're just doing their thing, you know. They're not worried about what notes. They're just like happy to express. And I think part of kind of coming back to ourselves as a human species is remembering, you know, it's remembering that childlike playfulness and creativity and expression that doesn't have the harsh judge in our mind that's telling us we're doing it right or wrong. And it's with singing, it's particularly difficult because there's so many, you know, like look how we're socially conditioned. There's like American Idol and all of these competitions, you know, that the best one goes, and they're really beautiful because they showcase so many people's talents. But like, you know, look at Simon, I don't know how you say his last name, Cowell, or you know, he'll tell somebody that they were terrible. Like, it's what? You know, like it's not very loving or compassionate or encouraging of people to express their voice, you know, based on the societal constructs that we're all getting feedback from. So no wonder why as adults we're afraid of being imperfect. And I'm not saying that I am totally absolved of that judgment. Like, I'll listen back to some of my healings and I'll hear a note that's off, or maybe it sounded a little bit breathy, or specifically when I play the piano, like I want it to be a masterpiece, but my skill level is not there. But it constantly allows me to just like continue to surrender and not be judgmental, to just like I sat at the piano and I did it. Like, yay for me. I would celebrate anyone else that did the same thing. I wouldn't be sitting there judging, if it was perfect or not.
I don't know, maybe my age is already there, but when I only know two things on piano, and one of them I learned before I learned the notes. But I always tell myself I'm good, although I know I know very
exactly. Yeah, it's like, why can't we just celebrate that we're just doing it?
But you had a very tough experience, obviously, because you said you were trying to be an artist, and in obviously in a environment or like in LA, and you didn't sing for 2 years after you decided not to be an artist. That must have been something very.
It was heartbreaking for me, because my dream since I was a little girl, like your little girl right now, I was trying to sing like Kristina Aguilera and Mariah Carey. Like I was going to be a famous singer. Like that was my, some people want to be an astronaut or a fireman. Like I wanted to be a singer. Like that was my thing. And I was incessantly singing as a child. And then, when I turned, when I was in my early 20s, I had an opportunity to actually live that dream. And I did, but the music business is an interesting thing. And for me, because I always had challenge with writing songs. I had brilliant ideas as to what I wanted to sing, but not being able to write my own music always gave my power away to somebody else's, expression. And I just noticed after, 4 or 5 years that every song that I would listen to that I sang, I sounded really good, but there was no me in it. There was no heart. There was no like feeling of my own personal experience that I was like singing to or singing for. And I was so unmotivated eventually. Like I actually kind of dreaded going into the studio and trying to do it. And I didn't feel passionate about it anymore. And that was like, it was heartbreaking for me, because when I decided to close that chapter, because I also am pretty intuitive, and I could also just sense that it wasn't right for me. I was so lost. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was like, well, that was supposed to be it. So now what do I do? And I was so disappointed, deeply, deeply disappointed. And I don't think I ever fully processed it until the last couple years. But I told myself I didn't love singing because it was too painful. So I just stopped. So I just stopped.
It's so interesting what you are saying, because we all have those dreams that we have such hard times burying or letting go of. How did you manage to be okay with not being what you thought all your life you'd be?
Well, that was a really interesting turning point of my life, because I no longer had this thing that I was reaching for, and I just felt so lost. I kind of began to wander. It was like, because I was in such a place of confusion and discomfort and disappointment, I started to search. So I started to search for myself in traveling the world and exposing myself to different cultures and different people. I started working with plant medicine that helped me to like really deepen into myself. So I think that span, of 2 years, it wasn't like all was lost. It definitely was challenging, but I was kind of like, I was digging my way back up towards where I was going to go. And I had no idea that would lead to sound healing and that I would use my voice again. So, sitting from this present moment, I'm so grateful for all of it, because the entire experience of me being in the studio and working with people, I paid so much attention that I very quickly learned how to record myself. And
Mm.
so now that I do sound, it's like all of that made sense. But
Mm.
truly being in the surrender of the unknown is what made it less difficult. Like I didn't look at it like my life is over because I'm not living the dream that I thought I had for myself. It was, well, now I'm going to find out who I am.
Mm.
And I was very, I just really like moved with the universe. Like I was very present on a day by day basis with where my life was going to go. And then eventually it led to, my purpose that I came to serve, which is, I hope for anyone that feels like they're really lost or they don't really know, what their purpose is in life, to just like, ask for help and just like flow with the universe. Because
Mm.
I mean, if I can come to it in the way that I did, I truly believe anyone else can.
Mm. So you keep mentioning you're very intuitive. Can you tell more about that?
Mm.
Where did you get your intuition, and how did you learn to believe in it? It's also not a very typical thing in the current world.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've always had a sense of really feeling people. So I guess I could probably say that it started with that, but I didn't have a lot of awareness around it.
Mm.
My my intuition kind of came more from really sensing and developing a deep relationship with myself. So I take a lot of time to self-reflect, whether that's through meditation, whether that's through listening to sound healings, whether that's through journaling, whether that's through plant medicine. I've just developed a sense of when things feel really in alignment for me or when they don't. And I've learned how to slow down. Like I used to, when I lived in LA, I was like 1,000 miles an hour. Just, I was partying. I had a blast. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. When I traveled a lot, I started to spend a lot of time by myself, which was pretty unusual. I was always used to kind of being distracted and just around a lot of other energies and influences. And when I started to spend a lot of time alone, whether that was in nature or going for a hike or, I did a 30-day isolation at one point, I began to start to just listen to my inner workings. I started to pay attention to my dreams because they were always speaking something to me. And it all just came from developing a deeper sense of myself. Like if you truly know yourself, if you know your values, if you know your boundaries, like it's easy to be able to maneuver situations and to know what would be most serving of you.
Mm.
And like I said, again, like I just spend time to listen to myself
Mm.
on a daily basis. I have a morning ritual, a practice that I start with every day. I recently took up a mantra meditation that was actually from Dr. Kulreet Chaudhary's book.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like my dedication to myself to just listen.
Mm. Again, a little shift in the topic. I've also noticed that you're a big advocate of joy and fun. Where does this side come from?
Well, I've lived my life until this past year, and honestly, coming together with my husband, I really struggled in life, like really, really struggled. Like I've always been able to find the blessing in anything, like even the most difficult circumstances and the deepest trauma, there's so much learning and growing and evolving in those moments. So like I've always been able to navigate to at least gratitude, maybe not necessarily joy.
Mhm.
um, and how I feel now, like when I was it was actually a recent post that I made in a former partnership. I struggled so bad constantly. I mean, it was on a daily basis that I was like really just trying to be okay, and doing incessant work to, release all of these old stories that I had, and to, be compassionate, even though I was really struggling. It was a lot. And at one point I decided to commit to joy and peace, which might seem silly, you know, and probably not something that we ever commit to, but I committed to it as if I was, you know, committing to doing a career or a job or something that's like really significant. Like I made it a discipline. So it didn't automatically make everything joyful and exciting. It still was challenging for a really long time, but I started to just have more awareness of myself, of where I wasn't in alignment with joy. So an example of this would be in moments where I was struggling and I was just, you know, me with myself, and say I'm like brushing my teeth in the mirror, and I'd start to have negative thoughts of something that was going on. And, you know, I do think that sometimes when we're going through challenge, like there's a lot of things that need to happen to process difficulty. Like for me, journaling is a really powerful one. Like sometimes you just need to get it out of your head, write it down on a piece of paper, burn it, and allow that space to just like, you know, be created in your mind. But what I noticed was a lot of the time I would be so stuck in a difficult experience because I would continue to think about it. I would ponder it. I would go over it again and again in my head. And then I would recognize as I'm sitting in the mirror, it's, you know, in the present moment, it's only me and the mirror and my toothbrush. And I am creating a negative experience for myself by going over this negative feedback, which is creating a physical response in my body, which is creating more negative thought patterns in my mind. And so I just started to become more of a witness of when I was choosing to be in negativity. And I would decide in those moments, like, what's present, what's here right now. This present moment is only me with me. I have complete authority over the thoughts that I'm choosing. I have complete authority over whether I want to feel joy or whether I want to be stuck in, you know, a negative situation that happened 3 days ago. And so I started to be a little bit lighter with it. And I would kind of like laugh at myself, like, look at you self-punishing again. Like, why don't we, you know, like, why don't I do something that's actually really loving and nourishing? Why don't I go on a hike and get in nature and reconnect with something that's bigger than me? And it's quite a process. I think it takes a lot of self-awareness to notice like our psychological constructs of how like we kind of have an addiction to challenge. We kind of have, and I mean, that was embedded in me and reinforced through relationship after difficult for me, it mostly came through relationships. My actual environment and the work that I've done and stuff like that, I didn't experience it as much, but in relationships, it was like I was addicted to challenge. And then because I was always living in that psychological warfare, I was creating more of it, you know, like you create what you are being. And so I decided to just commit to joy and peace. And anytime I would get in, you know, conversation that was leading away from that, then I would have a boundary and just say, you know, in a really loving way, I don't want to communicate and combat in this way. And it was interesting because I all of a sudden started to feel this like incredible sovereignty and liberation from getting stuck in, you know, those really negative cycles. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, it does make sense because as you were talking, I was thinking, I need to ask. I need to ask about the origin of one more thing, and
Sure.
it might be a funny question, but you have a lot of wisdom in your explanations of your life experiences. Where do you get your wisdom from? Do you have some teachers that you love, or books that you read, or it's just natural?
And no, there's definitely. I think some of it. I've always had an ability to kind of see things in a way. Mostly other people. However, for myself, it all comes from a lot of work that I've done on myself. Like I think all of the challenge that I've been through in my personal experience has been to evolve and transform and learn the ways that worked for me so that I could offer that to other people. I think that's a massive way as a soul why we go through like really difficult challenges, to be in service of other people. And man, I have so many teachers that I could talk about. Well, one, I would like to thank you personally for Mind Valley, because two of my hugest teachers that have massively impacted my life. One was John and Missy Butcher. I did Life Book. And when I was in the craziest financial crisis of my life, like almost completely broke for the first time in my life, I synchronistically found Christy Marie Sheldon's Unlimited Abundance. That I mean, you listen to the stories of people whose lives this has changed. I am one of them. And I could give you like wild examples of how it worked for me, but everything that I went through in unblocking my abundance, you know, like honestly, part of it was even leading me to, you know, my marriage and my partnership. So those are two huge ones. I'm sure everyone that watches you is probably very, very connected with Mind Valley. But other teachers, I would say a really huge one for me for a long time was Dr. Joe Dispenza. I read his books. I did his meditations for a long time. And, you know, just the way that he describes what's physically happening in the body, you know, when we are stuck in this cycle of staying the same, and how, you know, everything that I was describing, how your negative thought patterns actually create they create a hormonal and like stress response in your body. You know, it increases your adrenaline. It puts your brain into your prefrontal cortex, where you're going into fight or flight, just simply from the thoughts that you're having. And so his work a lot, you know, I spent a lot of time with. That's probably the one that I spent the most time with. Other things that I've done, I've worked with a spiritual mentor. Her name is Samantha Sweetwater. She helped to guide me in a lot of, she helped guide me when I did a 30-day isolation. And her wisdom of plant medicine, of indigenous culture, of, you know, eco fields, like, you know, her wealth of knowledge just became something that I got to experience one-on-one through my own process of healing. She's an incredible spiritual mentor. You can find her. I believe her website is samanthasweetwater.com. And then, you know, probably the biggest teacher that has been the most profound for me has been the earth. It has truly been the earth. I mean, I spent 30 days in isolation in Sedona, which, you know, I didn't have any contact with the outside world. My phone was off. Everything that I did, because I would go spend time out on the land, I would do at sunrise, so I wouldn't run into other people's energy. And the blessings and the wisdom that I received just from listening to the earth was like, you know, anything that you could read in a book. You know, I would go out on nature wanders and I would make a prayer. I would take tobacco as an offering, just a little like smidge of tobacco, and I would offer it at the beginning of my nature wander. And I would make a prayer to the earth for some clarity around why I was feeling challenged in relationships with women, or, you know, whatever it might have been at the time. And somehow, in just walking in silence, you know, there would be a bird that would fly over, and it was like I would have this aha moment where it was like everything was speaking to me, and I would speak to the earth my dreams. It was like I was alone, so everything was alive to me. I was no longer disconnected from nature, which I think as human beings in this day and age, like, we're very disconnected from nature. And that's that was a really potent one for me. And I also followed the work of this incredible author, and I believe he's a psychologist. His name is Bill Plotkin. And I followed his book, Soulcraft, where he's taking, you know, science and psychology and spirituality and like really meshing it all together. And then he talks about the way, you know, why as a society, we're kind of stuck in this like patho-adolescent age, where we don't go through initiations like indigenous culture did. You know, like they had rites of passage. When you got to a certain age, they had different rites of passage to initiate you into becoming an adult. And that is so absent from our culture. And, you know, he's also done a lot of work. He guides vision quests, like fasted vision quests. And so much of his wisdom is stuff that he's also gathered from the earth. And he has 2 books that I've read, Wild Mind and Soulcraft. And then he also has, I think it's Nature and the Human Psyche, or I think I might be wrong. He is a profound, I mean, if you really want to gather, like if you're looking for like a starting point that's really interesting to tie everything all together, that one is, that one's probably the most amazing.
I think I'll have to ask you for your authors and books recommendations, and leave it in the post that will come with this video.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of really nice rituals and traditions, as I've noticed from what you've been sharing, and good teachers. I want to ask you a slightly less serious question. Do you have a soundtrack of your life? Something that keeps brain itching?
Soundtrack of my life, like just like a song that I like listening to all the time. This is going to make you laugh so hard, I hope. So I don't listen to it every day. However, anytime I put this song on, I feel like I am so alive. I can't not dance or like sing at the top of my lungs to this song. It's Enigma, Return to Innocence.
Ooh, nice one. Wow.
And it's got, you know, it's got like the indigenous influence in it. When I did my isolation, I listened to it every single morning at sunrise when I would drive to go on a hike. And it just like, I mean, the words that she's speaking in that song, you know, it's so beautiful. And then the indigenous chanting for me is just like, it's the one thing that it doesn't matter what state I'm in, it'll always turn me into like automatic state of joy.
It's a little unexpected, honestly.
Yeah, I know. Most people laugh at me because I've never loved a song so much.
Oh, that's so cool. I actually recently heard it accidentally on some retro radio in the car, and someone
I think it's from the 90s or it's something like that. Yeah, I remember it growing up, and I can't even remember how I came back to it because it was only maybe like last year. And I mean, it is for sure my very, very favorite song. I actually use, surprisingly, it might sound a little bit funny, but I actually use my own sounds, like meditations that I've done, or I have a song on Spotify that was actually, that transmission came through when I was in Sedona. So it was like particularly like really, really special. Also, when I listen to it, it doesn't feel like I'm listening to myself. I know that it's me, but whatever's coming through is like beyond me. I'm very spiritual. So, you know, the energies that come through me, they feel part of me, but also different. And it feels like it truly just brings me into resonance and empowerment and authority and clarity. And so I actually use my own stuff in my morning ritual a lot.
It's funny you're laughing at that, because I just recently had to listen to the editing of my own meditation. So I decided, well, I'll just meditate. I realized that it was the first time I was meditating with my own voice. And I was also thinking, like, is that okay? Is that normal?
Yeah, it's totally normal for me. So don't think you're alone.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with any sort of relationship with yourself, even if it's a relationship of guru and a teacher and a student.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
So before we finish, I want to ask you, because I want to bring this conversation back in the loop to sound alchemy. If there is just this one thing you would want the people who are listening to us to take away out of this conversation, but if that one thing was coming from you as a sound alchemist, because we talked about a lot of things, but the sound, what would that be?
Honestly, I think probably because of what has happened recently with my husband, I would say use your voice. Use your voice. Everyone has a song, you know, and it's just like you were saying, the healing that you feel just by singing, you know, whether it's lullabies to your children or to a song that you really love, or if it's belting Enigma, Return to Innocence in your car, like use your voice, like, and if you're interested, educate yourself on why that's so healing, you know, like you don't need, you know, a bunch of sound bowls or any instrument. Like your body is the instrument, and your sound is, you know, your own personal healer that you can use anytime. Part of just really quickly, I don't want to get too much into this, but before I even came to sound healing, I was doing the float tank a lot. And I know it's supposed to be sensory deprivation, but like I really wanted sound. And so what I started to do was, as I was processing things that were happening for me, I would touch different places on my body and I just would sing. And I later came to find out this is what toning is called. It's like your intuitive ability to just know what your body needs, you know, and that doesn't need to sound pretty, you know, and and that pretty is judgment, but it doesn't need to sound right. It just is, it's vibration. Like if you think of it as vibration, like your voice is such a powerful thing. And I think if we could all just use our voices more and sing our songs more, you know, like I think the world could be a more beautiful place. It is already beautiful, but
Thank you so much. Thank you for this beautiful conversation. I really enjoyed it. I really love your realness and warmth, and it was so easy. So thank you for this energy. For those who are going to watch the recording, I want to traditionally ask you to leave a heart to my amazing guest, Vylana.
Heart it up.
You can leave the hearts in any shapes or form. I will try to provide the list of all the recommendations in this post.
Yeah. I also recently recorded a couple, people have been asking a lot. I've recently recorded a full sound healing that's for the full body that's like 48 minutes long. I'm just getting it mastered, but it should be really fast. So that'll be out on my Spotify and iTunes, and I'll post it on my social media and likely YouTube. So for people who are looking for like a deeper journey, that will be available really soon.
Oh, that's cool. So if you want more angelic sounds, then follow Vylana. And I would say, you know, I have to tune my harp every other day, otherwise it will get out of tune. I think we should tune our bodies as well. So if you want that, I believe that that you will be in the right hands for tuning your body.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, and bye.
Bye.